Emily Carter stepped into Prestige Motors, the polished floors gleaming under the soft glow of chandeliers that seemed to whisper tales of wealth and power. The air was thick with the scent of leather and luxury, and the showroom felt less like a place to buy cars and more like a temple to status. Rows of sleek vehicles gleamed under the perfect lighting, their curves and chrome accents reflecting the aspirations of those who could afford them. At the center of it all stood a deep blue coupe, its paint shimmering like liquid sapphire, the very car Emily had dreamed of giving her sister, Rachel. But unlike the impeccably dressed clientele who flowed effortlessly through the space, Emily's simple white t shirt, faded jeans, and worn sneakers made her stand out like a single note played off key in a grand symphony. Her brown hair was pulled back into a loose ponytail, her face calm, but marked with quiet determination. She carried no designer handbag, no flashy accessories, only the weight of a promise she intended to keep. Rachel had fought a brutal battle with cancer, enduring endless nights of pain, fear, and uncertainty. Her dream wasn't extravagant, it was a small beacon of hope to own a car like this, a symbol of new beginnings and hard won victories. As Emily moved forward, the soft click of her sneakers echoed in the cavernous space, drawing subtle, lingering glances from the polished crowd. Eyes briefly paused, then darted away, some with thinly veiled judgment, others with barely concealed disbelief. The cold elegance of the showroom seemed to press down on her, a silent reminder that here, in this sanctuary of affluence, she was an outsider. But Emily's steps did not falter. Each footfall was a testament to her unwavering resolve. This was no ordinary visit. It was a mission fueled by love and resilience. As she approached the shimmering coupe, the distance between her simple appearance and the world of luxury around her only seemed to sharpen. Yet Emily carried herself with a quiet grace that demanded to be seen, not for what she wore, but for what she stood for. Mark Simmons, the sales manager at Prestige Motors, stood near the sleek front desk, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit that hugged his tall frame with precision. His hair was perfectly combed, every strand seemingly in place, as if to mirror the control he wielded over this world of luxury. He greeted the usual flow of customers with practiced charm, polished smiles, firm handshakes, and an air of effortless confidence. But when his eyes landed on Emily Carter, something shifted. The warmth vanished instantly, replaced by a frosty dismissiveness that cut sharper than any words. His gaze swept over her simple outfit, the plain white t shirt, the worn sneakers, and the modest jeans, taking in her unpretentious demeanor as if it were an offense to the polished world he curated. Without a hint of greeting, Mark's lips pressed into a thin line before he turned away, burying himself back into a pile of paperwork, signaling loud and clear that Emily was beneath his concern. Around him, the atmosphere seemed to tighten, as if the very air responded to his disdain. Customers in expensive coats and sparkling jewelry glanced toward Emily with quick, judgmental looks, some barely concealing smirks as their eyes flicked from her to the luxury vehicles that surrounded them. Emily could almost feel the invisible barrier rising, a silent but impenetrable wall built on assumptions and prejudice. Yet, Mark was unshaken, confident that his dismissal was justified. In his mind, Emily was just another passerby, someone who wandered into a world she didn't belong to, lacking the credentials of wealth and status required to be taken seriously here. His actions weren't merely about business, they were about guarding a gate only a select few were worthy to cross. But Emily, grounded in her purpose and undeterred by the coldness, took a steady breath. The cold eyes, the dismissive silence, none of it would stop her. For her, this was not about fitting in, but about breaking through. As Mark's back remained turned, Emily's footsteps carried a quiet strength forward, ready to confront the judgment with unyielding resolve. Emily's footsteps echoed softly across the glossy showroom floor as she approached the deep blue coupe, the very car she had imagined countless times as the perfect gift for her sister Rachel. The coupe gleamed under the showroom lights, its sleek lines and flawless finish radiating an almost otherworldly elegance, a symbol of freedom and triumph. Just as she reached out to gently touch the cool metal surface, a voice broke through the tense silence. "Can I help you with anything?" Daniel, a young sales associate with a genuine smile and approachable demeanor, stepped forward cautiously. His tone was warm, the kind of kindness that felt like a quiet rebellion against the cold judgment hanging in the air. Before Emily could respond, Mark Simmons appeared like a shadow, cutting through the moment with a biting edge to his voice. Thanks, Daniel. I've got it from here, he said sharply, his eyes flicking over Emily with thinly veiled contempt. The air seemed to freeze as his words landed, a blatant message that Emily was unwelcome, unworthy of assistance. Mark's gaze swept dismissively from Emily back to the coupe, as if the car itself was a treasure meant only for the elite, and she was nothing more than an intruder. Then came the cruelest words, dripping with sarcasm and disdain. Are you sure you're in the right place? This is a very expensive car? He sneered, voice laced with mock politeness. Maybe you'd prefer something a little more within your range? The implication hit Emily like a physical blow, a sharp, cold reminder that her appearance had already condemned her. She could feel every whisper, every sidelong glance intensify around her, as though the entire room conspired to remind her that she didn't belong. But Emily's breath remained steady, her gaze unwavering. This wasn't about her. It was about Rachel. No amount of condescension, no sneer or insult would shake her from the mission she had set out to accomplish. With quiet dignity, Emily turned her eyes back to the shimmering coupe, refusing to be diminished by the ignorance that surrounded her. A low murmur rippled through the showroom like a gathering storm, each whispered word sharp as a blade. The elegantly dressed patrons exchanged quick glances, their eyes narrowing with barely concealed judgment as they studied Emily Carter from head to toe. The woman in the form-fitting black dress smirked, her lips curling into a smile that barely masked a sneer of disbelief. Can you believe she's even here? She muttered, her voice dripping with scorn. Others chuckled softly, their laughter a cruel soundtrack to Emily's silent defiance. The words floated through the air, loud enough for Emily to catch every cruel syllable. She couldn't possibly afford that car. The room felt suddenly smaller, the luxury vehicles standing as cold witnesses to the unspoken prejudice. It wasn't just about the clothes Emily wore or the simplicity of her style. It was the color of her skin that made her an anomaly, a disruption to the flawless facade of wealth and privilege. Eyes darted away quickly when caught, but the sting of those looks burned deep, searing into Emily's heart like invisible scars. Every sideways glance, every exchanged smirk was a reminder that she was an outsider, an unwelcome guest in a world that measured worth by the label sewn into one's jacket or the gleam of a watch. Yet, amidst the suffocating cloud of whispered judgments, Emily's resolve only strengthened. Her hands remained steady at her sides, her gaze fixed firmly on the coupe that represented hope, not just for her sister Rachel, but for herself as well. The harsh reality pressed down on her, a bitter taste of exclusion and racism, but she refused to shrink away. Each disparaging word and cold stare became fuel, lighting a fire beneath her determination. In that room filled with opulence and entitlement, Emily Carter stood as a silent challenge, an unyielding force that refused to be defined by the shallow judgments of others. The weight of every whispered insult and sidelong glance pressed down on Emily like an invisible chain, tightening with each passing moment. The showroom, once gleaming with promise, now felt cold and suffocating, a gilded cage built from judgment and prejudice. The polished floors seemed to reflect not just light, but the collective disdain of everyone present. Yet, despite the sting of humiliation that coursed through her veins, Emily's spirit remained unbroken. She straightened her shoulders, drawing a quiet strength from somewhere deep within, a reservoir of resilience forged through years of hardship and determination. Slowly, deliberately, she turned away from the sparkling rows of cars, from the blue coupe that symbolized hope, from the cold eyes that sought to diminish her worth, and walked toward the exit with the grace of someone who carried more than just herself. She carried the dreams of her sister Rachel and the weight of their shared journey. The soft click of her sneakers echoed softly, a rhythmic beat against the harsh silence that had settled like a shroud over the room. No one spoke as she passed, no one reached out, and no one offered a word of comfort. But Emily's steps did not falter. Each one was a testament to her refusal to be defined by others' ignorance. As she crossed the threshold, leaving behind the luxury and the judgment, there was a shift in the air, a stillness pregnant with unspoken truths. Behind her, the faces of those left inside flickered with disbelief, guilt, and a dawning realization that this woman, who had been so casually dismissed, held a power they had failed to see. Emily didn't need their approval or their pity. Her silent departure was not a defeat, but a quiet declaration that dignity cannot be taken away by scorn, and that true strength lies in standing tall, even when the world tries to push you down. Outside, the sunlight embraced her like a promise, one of new beginnings, unshaken resolve, and a future still waiting to be claimed. Just moments after Emily's quiet departure, the atmosphere outside Prestige Motors shifted with the smooth arrival of a sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom. The car glided to a stop with an elegance that seemed to command time itself to slow. Slow. The door opened, and out stepped Alexander Carter, tall, composed, and exuding an unmistakable air of power. His salt and pepper hair was perfectly styled, and his tailored suit clung to his frame like armor forged in confidence and success. To the stunned eyes of the dealership staff and onlookers, Alexander was the embodiment of authority, wealth, and influence, a man whose name was whispered in boardrooms and headlines alike. But no one here knew the deeper truth. Alexander was Emily's older brother, a tech mogul whose groundbreaking innovations had reshaped industries and amassed billions. His presence alone transformed the showroom's energy from cold indifference to electric tension. Conversations ceased mid-sentence, and every head turned as if the air itself demanded their attention. The polished faces that had looked down on Emily moments before now showed a mix of shock, respect, and barely concealed fear. Alexander's gaze swept the room with quiet command, locking eyes briefly with Mark Simmons, whose previous contempt drained away into a pale, stunned silence. This was no ordinary client. This was a force who could buy the entire dealership with a flick of his pen. Yet here he was, stepping in not just as a customer, but as the defender of his sister's dignity. The quiet power of his arrival spoke volumes, dismantling the fragile veneer of elitism and prejudice that had governed the room mere moments before. In this charged silence, the unspoken truth resonated. Emily Carter was far more than her modest clothes and the assumptions they had bred. She was family to a titan, a woman whose worth could never be measured by appearances alone. The arrival of Alexander Carter was the catalyst for a reckoning, one that would upend the judgments and force a confrontation with uncomfortable truths that none in the showroom could ignore. Alexander Carter moved through the showroom with the assured stride of a man accustomed to commanding attention without uttering a word. The once hushed whispers morphed into stunned silence as every eye fixed on him, the stark contrast between his refined presence and the dismissive attitudes moments before impossible to ignore. Standing tall before Mark Simmons and the gathered staff, Alexander's voice cut through the tension with calm authority, resonating like a bell tolling truth. Emily is not just the woman you see before you, he began, eyes steady and unwavering. She is the founder of the Carter Foundation, a charity dedicated to transforming the lives of disabled children, thousands whose futures have been reshaped by her unwavering commitment. His words hung heavy in the air, shattering the illusion that wealth and appearance alone defined worth. Faces once filled with contempt now flushed with shame as the weight of Alexander's revelation settled over the room. The realization dawned painfully slow, like the breaking of dawn after a long, dark night. Emily was not merely a visitor from an unfamiliar world. She was a leader, a visionary whose impact transcended any car or showroom. Alexander's gaze shifted briefly to the blue coupe Emily had admired, a symbol not just of luxury, but of hope, resilience, and triumph. She doesn't need to prove her worth with material possessions, he continued, his tone firm yet filled with pride. She could buy this entire dealership if she chose to, but she doesn't, because her true value lies in the lives she touches, in the legacy she's building through compassion and action. The air seemed to vibrate with the power of this truth, reverberating through the walls, unsettling the very foundation of the prejudices that had taken root. Mark Simmons stood frozen, his confidence eroded by the undeniable reality before him. The staff and customers who had so quickly dismissed Emily now found themselves confronting their own failures and blind spots. In that moment, the true measure of a person's worth was laid bare, not in the clothes they wore or the cars they drove, but in the heart and purpose behind their actions. Mark Simmons stood rooted to the spot, his usual composure shattered by the gravity of Alexander Carter's words. The smug confidence that once defined him now gave way to a suffocating guilt that pressed heavily on his chest. His mind raced, unraveling the moments when he had let his prejudice dictate his judgment, reducing Emily Carter to nothing more than a passing shadow in the glossy showroom. As the room's eyes bore into him, Mark felt the weight of every dismissive glance he had cast, every sarcastic remark he had uttered, crashing down like a tidal wave of regret. Driven by a mix of shame and a desperate need for redemption, Mark dove headfirst into learning everything he could about the Carter Foundation. Nights blurred into mornings as he pored over stories of children whose lives had been transformed by Emily's tireless efforts, stories filled with hope, resilience, and unwavering love. The more he uncovered, the deeper his remorse grew, for he had judged a woman whose influence and compassion far exceeded the superficial measures he once valued. Realizing that mere words could never undo the damage, Mark resolved to take action. He reached out to Emily, requesting a meeting not out of obligation, but from a genuine desire to make amends and grow beyond his past mistakes. When they finally met, Mark's apology was raw and heartfelt, a trembling acknowledgement of the pain he had caused and a solemn vow to change. Emily listened, her expression unreadable yet softening as she sensed the sincerity beneath his words. But she made it clear, forgiveness would not come lightly, nor would it be a shield for empty promises. She challenged Mark to prove his transformation through consistent, meaningful actions. That challenge ignited a spark within him. Determined, Mark threw himself into volunteering with the Carter Foundation, attending workshops on social justice and championing initiatives to foster equity and respect within the dealership. His transformation rippled through the workplace, inspiring others to confront their biases and embrace a culture rooted in empathy and fairness. What began as a painful lesson blossomed into a powerful journey of redemption, one marked not by words alone, but by the quiet strength of changed hearts and lives. Days turned into weeks as Mark Simmons immersed himself fully in the work of the Carter Foundation, shedding the skin of his old prejudices and embracing a new purpose that transcended profit and status. Each morning, he arrived early to join the bustling team of volunteers. His hands no longer focused on sales brochures, but on organizing events, coordinating fundraisers, and simply lending a caring presence to the children whose lives the foundation touched. The laughter of disabled children playing in the sunlit halls became a soundtrack to his transformation, each smile a reminder of the true meaning of value and success. Gone was the man who once measured worth by appearance and wealth. In his place stood someone humbled by the resilience and courage of those he now served. At the dealership, Mark became a catalyst for change, spearheading workshops that challenged long-held biases and encouraging colleagues to confront their own blind spots. His words carried the weight of experience and a newfound empathy that stirred the hearts of those around him. "We don't just sell cars," he would say, voice steady with conviction. "We sell respect. We sell fairness." His commitment sparked a shift in the culture of Prestige Motors, a subtle yet profound awakening that transformed cold indifference into genuine care. Emily watched this transformation quietly, her heart swelling with cautious hope. She saw in Mark not just a man seeking redemption, but a beacon of what true growth and accountability looked like. Together, they stood at charity events, side by side, united by a shared vision that transcended their past conflicts. Mark's journey was far from over, but every step he took was a testament to the power of humility and the possibility of change. The story of their intertwined paths became a living proof that true worth is measured not by the labels society affixes, but by the courage to confront one's mistakes, to grow, and to uplift others along the way. In the light of this new beginning, the dealership and its people began to heal, learning that compassion and respect are the most valuable currencies of all. The grand ballroom of the Boston Hotel shimmered with warm light, draped in elegant decor that reflected the spirit of hope and generosity filling the air. At the heart of the event stood Emily Carter, radiant and poised, welcoming guests with a genuine smile that carried the weight of her journey, a journey defined not by privilege, but by resilience and purpose. The charity gala was one of the largest the Carter Foundation had ever hosted, a celebration dedicated to raising funds for disabled children, whose bright eyes and joyous laughter filled the room with life. Amid the crowd moved Mark Simmons, no longer the cold sales manager, but a transformed man whose commitment to change had become his new identity. He moved with quiet humility, helping wherever he could, his presence a testament to the power of redemption and growth. As children received gifts and support, their faces alight with happiness. Mark's heart swelled with a profound sense of fulfillment. Watching Emily from a distance, he felt gratitude not only for the cause, but for the second chance she had unwittingly given him. Their paths, once marked by judgment and misunderstanding, had converged in a shared mission that transcended their past. Emily approached Mark in a rare moment of quiet away from the crowd, her eyes soft with acknowledgement. "Thank you for everything you've done," she said, her voice steady and sincere. "You've done what few can. Found yourself again." Mark's smile held the weight of that journey, the heavy burdens shed and the new purpose embraced. This night wasn't just a fundraiser. It was a milestone marking the profound change not only in the lives of those they helped, but within themselves. As the gala continued, filled with hope and celebration, the message resonated clearly. True worth lies not in wealth or appearance, but in the courage to face one's flaws, to forgive, and to create a better world for others. The story of Emily and Mark closed not with grand gestures or dramatic vindication, but with the quiet, powerful truth that redemption and respect are earned through compassion, action, and an unwavering belief in the human spirit.